Who stole George Matthews' life? Doctor, I think I'm losing my mind. When a wealthy young man turns up at respected psychiatrist Dr. George Matthews' office uttering these words, it changes his safe existence forever. Suddenly Matthews finds himself dragged into a strange, surreal world where nothing is certain. And when an actress is found murdered, a horse tied up outside her apartment, Matthews loses his memory and must find it in a nightmarish urban jungle of mistaken identities, secrets, and insanity. John Franklin Bardin was an American author, best known for 3 mystery novels written and published between 1946 and 1948. The Last of Philip Banter, Devil Take the Blue Tail Fly, and the book in question. The Deadly Percheron would be the first of these works to be published, and its status as a debut novel seems even more extraordinary when we consider the confidence and originality with which the author delivers his story. My introduction to the book came by way of the 1986 film Mona Lisa, co-written and directed by Neil Jordan. In the film, a supporting character, Thomas, played by Robbie Coltrane, is reading the book and discusses it frequently with the film's protagonist, George, played by Bob Hoskins. The two characters note the unreality of the book, its strange spin on the standard format of the murder mystery. These discussions become a kind of leitmotif throughout the film, underlining the nature of the friendship between these two characters, which seems both odd and oddly wholesome in contrast to the violent, often sleazy world of the film, and at the same time establishing themes of investigation and self-reflection, which create further parallels between the two works. When George is tasked with finding a runaway teenager, lost to the city's dark underbelly of porn and prostitution, the discussions on Bardin's book become a kind of mirror or counterpoint to George's own investigation, and in turn speak to the character's estrangement from his own teenage daughter, and his perceived failure as both a father and a protector. Jordan even tips the hat to Bardin, including a lingering shot of a white horse at a significant point in the narrative, a definite reference to the Deadly Percheron of the title. Is this a coincidence, or is fiction intruding upon the character's frayed perception of reality? Much of Jordan's work throughout his career is about the nature of stories, and the role that stories play in shaping our understanding of the world and our relationship to it. His characters often invent stories, and then use these fictions as a way of revealing something of themselves, using fiction as a lens through which to either reframe or to confront an all-too-personal truth. We see this across the spectrum of Jordan's creative works, with clear examples of the technique found in films like The Miracle from 1991 and Ondine from 2009, as well as in his recent novels, The Drowned Detective from 2016 and The Well of St. Nobody from 2023. One could even interpret Mona Lisa as a film that presents a story within a story, with Thomas sharing the story of the Deadly Percheron, and George in turn inventing his own story, the one we see play out on screen. This is something else that is reflected in Bardin's book, where a character with memory loss is forced to reinvent themselves, and with it their perception of the world around them. How much of the subsequent narrative is real and how much of it is part of this invention, or this delusion, is up to the reader's interpretation. But there is a definite element of ambiguity to how the story develops, which seems specific to both the book's heightened subjective sense of reality, or unreality, as well as in the Freudian or psychological underpinnings of the central character. First seeing Mona Lisa as a teenager, I thought Bardin and his book were inventions of Jordan and his co-writer David Leyland. Discovering much later that the book was real, it became a kind of mythical object for me, one that felt somehow strange and elusive, especially given that the book at that time was out of print. When the book was republished early this year as part of a new series by Penguin, part of their modern classics Crime and Espionage range, I still remembered it in the context of Jordan's film, and leapt at the opportunity to finally experience the book for myself. On the surface, The Deadly Percheron functions as a standard detective story. We inhabit the perspective of a central character, Dr. George Matthews, locked into an unfolding procedural, one in which he's become an unwilling protagonist of. There are cinematic allusions here, shades of Alfred Hitchcock in the initial idea of a man being wrongly accused of a crime he claims he didn't commit, a familiar Hitchcockian device found in earlier films like The 39 Steps, Young and Innocent, Saboteur, as well as later films like I Confess, The Wrong Man, and Frenzy. The book also feels like a precursor to Hitchcock's later film Vertigo, another investigative procedural, which frames a more conventional detective story around a deeper Freudian deconstruction of a character's psyche, one that leaves the audience to question the motivations of the protagonist and their grip on reality. There are literary precedents here as well. The first-person perspective of the book plays into all the usual cliches of the detective genre. It frames events through our relationship to the central character, who narrates the story, taking on the role of the amateur sleuth. As such, we learn only what the character learns, accepting his truth as our own, discovering the real nature of events, or the clues of the initial crime, as the character discovers them. This is something Bardin has a lot of fun with, subverting the expectations of the character, and with it subverting the expectations of the reader. At several times the author blindsides the reader with dramatic revelations that change our understanding of both the story and the central character, something that he's only able to achieve by presenting the story entirely from the Doctor's limited perspective. Even within the context of a typical hard-boiled detective story, however, Bardin is already experimenting with the format, deconstructing it. Instead of focusing on the usual gumshoe, the private detective archetype made popular by writers like Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammet, and Mickey Spillane, the book's protagonist is a psychiatrist. He approaches the murder from an analytical perspective, attempting to understand the psychological motivations behind the killing, as well as being able to better question the psychological motivations of the other characters embroiled within the same plot. It also gives him a context to question and re-question his own motivations, his sense of self, refracted and deformed as it is by his inability to fully grasp the machinations of the story, which becomes a central component of the plot. Throughout the book, it is this emphasis on the psychological, and the themes of identity and the loss of identity, and more plainly the literal loss of face, that gives context to the book's unreality. As such, we could say the experience of the book plays out like a conventional detective story, but it's as if the substance of the material has been somehow warped and distorted, as if we're seeing the events play out as a reflection in a funhouse mirror. Having been keen to read The Deadly Percheron for several years, the book did not disappoint. I raced through it in a couple of days, eager to know the truth behind the initial crime, as well as the answers to the many questions and mysteries that Bardin raises during the character's investigation. The plot is full of surprising twists and turns which work to subvert and transform our expectations and our understanding of the plot. Like so many great works of mystery and detective fiction, the book is bleak, pitiless, cynical. It has a sardonic tone which reads as a mocking parody of the popular detective fiction of the era. Taking advantage of the intelligent, well-educated voice of the protagonist, Bardin is better able to sketch the world of the book and its wide array of supporting characters in a rich vocabulary, creating a labyrinthine underworld of shady characters and motivations in terse but descriptive prose. This was a great book for me. Great in the sense that it satisfied my expectations, presenting me with a mystery that was both gripping and engaging throughout, but great also as a piece of storytelling. It's a mystery novel, but it could also be read as a work of pulp existentialism, one that explores deeper, more enigmatic themes. For instance, a central theme here is identity, both in terms of identifying the killer and the individuals responsible for the manipulation of the central character, but also identity in the existential sense of the loss of self, perception, and the nature of what is real. I found this aspect of the book even more affecting and thought-provoking than the already satisfying elements of popular genre. I was really pleased to see The Deadly Percheron republished as part of this Penguin modern classic Crime and Espionage series, all of which feature beautiful cover art and a return to that iconic green spine. I can only hope Penguin have plans to publish more of Bardin's works, specifically the last of Philip Banter and Devil Take the Blue Tail Fly, both of which I'm incredibly eager to read next. If you have any thoughts on the book in question that you'd like to discuss further, then please leave a note in the comments. Likewise, if you have any thoughts on other books by John Franklin Bardin, or recommendations for books similar to the book in question, then please leave a comment below. Until next time, thanks for watching.